Throughout history and around the world, women have been the textile workers, the sewers, quilters, knitters, weavers. And a new book out explores the significance, the impact, and the connections that come from this invaluable women's work. The book is called With Her Own Hands by Nicole Nehrig. She's a clinical and research psychologist and a passionate knitter and textile crafter herself. Nicole joining us via Zoom this morning to share more about these incredible stories. Nicole, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the beginnings of this. Happened during the pandemic, and in addition to all the fun things you were doing about knitting and living and all of that, you decided to start writing too.
Yeah, I was quarantined with a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. My husband and I were both trying to balance full-time jobs with full-time childcare. And I had no time for myself. And I found that knitting was something that I could still do for myself in the context of taking care of my kids while they were in their school Zooms, while they were playing outside in the garden. I could sit and knit. I took orders from them about stuffed animals they wanted me to make. My son put in an order for a pair of swordfish socks, which I had to figure out how to make swordfish on a pair of socks for him. And it was just a great way that I could do something creative and to kind of fulfill my own intellectual needs, also to kind of ground myself in a difficult time and, still engage with the kids around it and have it be something that I could do alongside childcare.
Right, and that just got you thinking. Let's talk about how those thoughts turned into action, started researching, doing deep dives, and traveling as well to share these stories.
Yeah, it was the fact that I could do this alongside my kids and the work of the home that got me thinking what this work meant to women throughout history. And it was fulfilling a lot of needs for me in terms of creative and intellectual satisfaction. It was connecting me with the community. You know, the knitting community is a wonderfully supportive community. And, I was able to find satisfaction through knitting that I couldn't access in other ways during lockdown. I couldn't go out with friends in the same way that I had or, engage in my research the way that I had prior to lockdown. So it really got me thinking, at times when women didn't have as many outlets and when, a lot of the work of the home is kind of drudgery and doesn't offer a lot in terms of fulfillment. This is something that women have had historically that did offer those things or that could offer those things. And so how did women find meaning and purpose and expression and connection and everything through textile work in different places and times? So this question really did take me far beyond the walls of my home, which had been life for, the most of a year. I traveled to Peru, I traveled to France and Portugal, Gee's Bend, Alabama, and I talked to people all over the world, both in person and on Zoom, and kind of followed threads. People were very generous and connected me. A friend connected me with a cross-stitch designer she had gone to college with, who then connected me to a lace historian. And I followed these threads and really just learned as much as I could about what this work means to women now and has meant to women in the past.
Very cool. And you mentioned threads. Let's talk about, maybe a story or, a culture that really stuck out to you and something that surprised you or maybe you really enjoyed.
Yeah, so many stories. I did the travels in Peru were really meaningful and opened my eyes to kind of a different way of engaging with this work, a way that's so deeply entwined with culture and means so much spiritually in terms of expression of themselves as a people, their historical practices, their cultural ideas, like all of these things are so captured in textiles, so much so that when I would ask weavers in Peru, like, what would you do if you couldn't weave anymore? I would just get these blank stares, like, what do you mean? Like, what? It was like, impossible to imagine not having this as part of their lives. And it is something that's in some parts of Peru dying out. Indigenous cultures are trying to keep it alive, but indigenous cultures are not as able to do that in the face of, economic needs and moving to cities to find work. So it's something that's really being kept alive, and that people are now needing to kind of make a more active effort to keep alive, but that they're, again, for the people who do it, it's so part of their identity that, I mean, the answers that I got were like, well, I'd spin or I'd dye the wool. They couldn't think of anything that wasn't related to textile work in some way, because it's so deeply a part of them and how they live and express themselves.
That's so cool. Who is this book for? Is there somebody, is this for anyone?
I think it's for anyone. I mean, obviously, people who do textile work, who practice these crafts, for whom it has meaning to them, is an ideal audience. And I hope that it resonates with their own experience of making textiles. I think also people who are interested in history, women's studies, these are things that are kind of, they speak to, the textile work is so ingrained in aspects of our culture and our history that, even if you're not particularly interested in textiles themselves, the textiles tell their own story, and the way women have engaged in textile work tells its own story and really speaks to important historical moments, like the creation of the Bayou Tapestry, which was done in embroidery and marks this really important, conquest of, along 1,000 years ago, and it really captures the culture and the history of that time. So I think it has a lot of different ways in. If you have, it's very interdisciplinary. So if you have an interest in any sort of history, anthropology, women's studies, textile work, art history, you might find things of interest.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us this morning. It sounds like a fascinating book, and can't wait to dive in. If you want to check it out with her own hands, Women Weaving Their Stories, it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.